Well, alright, everything's welded as far as the little ropes to go around your bezel. I'd recommend prepping your bracelet, and if you're going to decide to weld them down the center, I'd recommend getting your digital calipers. And at this point you'll want to measure to find your center line and score it on both sides. And this is where you're going to start from the center, going down, welding your bezels with the rope attached. So you really want to prep your piece, so I'd recommend getting a third hand that'll hold your piece while you're welding, and get your boric acid, denatured alcohol to clean the metal surface before welding. And once that's done, then you want to start fluxing through your batter axe flux. Okay, at this stage I have the bezels made, the ropes wrapped around them. It's best to set your stone in the bezel and then place that welded rope design around it so as not to deform your bezel, and then remove the stone, and then you're ready to start getting your bezel setting and start welding. As you see, I've already begun welding, which, as I mentioned before, you want to coat the inside and outside some batter axe. If you have a lot of problems with your welding as far as causing fire scale, you can use some applications that prevent fire scale. Not totally, but you just have to learn to control your torch, and I'd recommend at this point moving to a number 6 or custom sawing a number 4 tip. You can take the tip of the number 4 and saw it open as to where you'll have a large, resulting in a large flame, so the piece is heated up immediately. So as you'll see here, and once the solder flows, I'd recommend going back and refluxing that area and fluxing the area next to that for your and we'll stop here so I can get to welding and show you the other side when we get to that welding. Alright, in this section you can see how got one side completed, and this is the reason why you really want to have your digital calipers or manual caliper, but you really want to be precise in marking 2 center lines so you can map out the layout of your bezels while you're welding. And again, continuously fluxing the area. And once again, if you have a problem when you finish doing your welding with fire scale, I mean, really the blue fire scale spray can come in handy. For the most part, light fire scaling can be buffed off with a red rouge. And again, wearing your mask and proper ventilation, I would consider that to be as toxic as working with the silica grinding wheels. So definitely want to protect yourself. And of course, during welding process, proper ventilation. You know, but make sure your solder is cadmium free. Go ahead and start welding the other side to complete this project, and then we'll throw it in the pickle. Anytime after you're doing a welding, bezels, wires, you always want to throw it in your Sparex pickle, and make sure you have that pickle pot turned on and warm, and you can either purchase one or use a crock pot. We'll continue welding, and I'll start up again when we finish that. Here you'll find the welding of the other end, finishing the other end of the bracelet. And as I mentioned before, it's a intermediate to difficult level project, so I wouldn't recommend starting out with something this complicated. Just a few tricks of the trade. You can actually roll while you're welding it. You can roll the piece back and forth to allow the solder to jump if you're working on a curvature. That's that piece. And that's where the third hand comes in hand here, is to and when creating bracelets like this, most bracelets, you always want to leave you always want to have a little area. Oops. You always want to have a little area that you could actually work with when it comes to cutting and cutting the bottom. You know, maybe about 2 millimeters left here to work with, to play with on both sides. Go back to welding, and then this will be sitting in the pickle for probably an hour. So that's why you actually start two projects, or work on a ring or something else in the middle of your project, sitting in the pickle to help take all the fire scale and boric acid off. Alright. Well, okay, we've gone from this stage of welding the bezels onto the bracelet, and at this time I'd recommend you could stamp your tab and weld the back of it, and then you want to fuse that on the inside so you have your signature to note who is the jeweler. And once again, once this stage is completed, I'd recommend putting it in your pickle jar to let it sit in the sulfuric bath of the Sparex, probably about an hour. And I'd say from the stage of welding the little ropes, putting them around the bezels, and welding process time is 3.5 hours elapsed. And we'll stop and start on the second project, which will consist of the Larimar turquoise, while the Lapis project is soaking in its bath. We'll stop here and okay, in this section you'll see the bracelet has been removed from the pickle jar, which now has an off-white look to it. And we'll go ahead and you'll have to wire brush that, so we'll move to doing that section now. Okay, I'm showing you the wire brushing method, so now you have a finish, which I actually recommend using two hands, holding on both sides when you're doing little by little. But I'm just showing this to you while I hold the camera. Now I recommend you go ahead and add your hydrochloric acid to darken the piece, and then go to high polishing and setting your stones. In this step you'll see we've applied the hydrochloric acid to the piece, and once again use goggles, protect your eyes from the hydrochloric acid. Work in a well ventilated area, respirator mask if needed be. Don't ever heat up your silver and apply this, creates the toxic smoke. Only use that process when trying to antique gold. And once you're completed, make sure you use your two wash bins, one to wash the chemical off, and then a clean bath of water to have a final rinse. Don't cross-contaminate your waters or your sonic or your hydrochloric acid or your pickle bath. Alright, just rinse it, pick it up, and we'll go straight to polishing before we set. Okay, well here we have the finished piece, polished inside and outside, and we'll go ahead and start setting the stones and pick up when I have those completed. I do recommend using a 2-in-1 epoxy backing up your stones on the inside. Well, this is the last session, and I'd like to show you the finished product here after setting all the lapis and the cuff bracelet. So you'll see you might find sometimes you might have to trim your rock just a little bit, so it's ideal to buy a group set of diamond burrs when it comes to trimming your rocks. And you know, you'll see the inside stamped, and you don't want to polish. A lot of times you don't want to do your final polishing with the stones in them. Just take note, lapis is pretty sensitive to heat, especially from your buffing wheel, so be careful when buffing on your final polish. I prefer to do all the polishing before I set the stone. And the Oklahoma Native Art Gallery here in the historic Stockyards district in Oklahoma City, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to go through some of these instructional video clips. Please visit our website at www.oknativeart.com.